Today's daf we're going to be learning a Sanhedrin daf Tzadivav. Today's daf is sponsored by Dina Kaufman and Rob Ginsburg to celebrate the wedding of their son Aaron to Dana Huri. So good to have a simcha in these difficult times. Mazal tov. Today's daf is sponsored by Mark Amina Septi Goldstein in loving memory of Mos Septi on his 28th year at site. A truly wonderful man. Okay, we're going to get started now with the last story of Sancheriv, and basically it's the last story because we're going to talk about his downfall. First, about his humiliation by God, and then by his murder by his sons. If you remember, we made mention of that, and now we're going to see why his sons killed him. So we start off with this pasuk that Rabbi Yabal quotes and says, if this wasn't a pasuk, there's no way I could have said this, because it looks like God is humiliating himself. It says God is going to shave Sancheriv and shave his head and his legs, and also his beard will be destroyed. Okay, so we're going to have to really get to understand what is this about. Also, the beard is going to be destroyed. So let's start from the words Atakud Shabrichu v'idmalek Gavra Saba. So God disguises himself as an elderly man, comes down to earth. Amar le ki aza l'gabei mizrach malchei mizrach u'ma'arav da'ititinu libanayu ukatlinu my amar lehu. And he says to him, right, this is where we end a very powerful question. When you get to the kings, where you took the sons and drafted them into your army, also it seems like he conquered them and then took their sons to be in his army. What are you going to say to them? Because you basically caused them to get killed, right, by this angel that killed them in the camp outside, trying to attack Jerusalem. So what are you going to say to them? How are you going to explain it? To which Sancheriv says, "Hu gavra, amar lehu hu gavra." That person, Sancheriv, says to God, "Bahu pachta nami yativ." I'm also worried about this. I don't know what I'm going to do. Amar le hayechi ne'avid. So he says back to God, what can we do? Give me some advice. Amar le zil v'shane nafsha. He says, go disguise yourself, and then no one will know who you are, and they won't be able to do anything to you, right? Basically, avoid it. But really, God has an ulterior motive. What does he want to do? We're going to see, he wants to humiliate him. But meishane, how am I going to disguise myself? Asked Sancheriv. Amar le zil aitele mispira ve'egzayach ana. Go bring me scissors, and I will give you a haircut. I'll make you look different. I'll shave you. He says, where am I supposed to get scissors from? Amarle, ulahahu beit avaite. Go to this house, particular house, he tells him, and go get from there. Azal eshkachinu. So he goes, he finds the house. Achu malche sharet v'id muleki gavre. Notice we have in this story, everyone's disguised as someone they're not. We have God disguises as an elderly man. We have angels here who disguise themselves as humans, and they're in the house. We have Sancheriv, who is now going to try to disguise himself to avoid the people. Now, these men, who are really angels, are grinding date pits. Amarle havuli mispara. So he says, can I have some scissors? Right, give me some scissors. Amarle toncha griva de kashiata v'niten lecha. First, we want you to grind a whole set of date pits. After that, we'll let you do this again. We're humiliating Sancheriv to do something, right? This humiliating act that I'm sure he never did in his life, right? They're really hard, by the way. So imagine trying to grind them. It can't be an easy job. So he does the amount that they asked him to do. And then they give him scissors. Now, why were they doing this? Seems like, number one, they wanted to humiliate him and have him do something he doesn't normally do. And number two, it seems like it was a delay tactic, because by the time he leaves there, it was dark. Now, why is this significant? Well, you'll see from the continuation. Amarle, so now God is going to shave him and cut his hair. Amarle, zil nura. So God says, I can't see. Bring me a light, right? What's a light in those days? It's not like a little, like a flashlight on your phone, but it's a fire. So nura. So he goes and brings a fire. Now, while he was fanning the flames, Sancheriv, all of a sudden, the fire caught on his beard. This is going to explain why it said when his beard was destroyed, it was destroyed by a fire. His hair lights on fire. So then God, right, I guess they put out the fire, I don't know, but in the end, his beard was totally destroyed by that, but God continues, he shaves off his head and also his beard, whatever was left. And this explains the pasuk, also the beard. Amar Rav Papa, and now Rav Papa just says, if you start scorching an Aramean, And he doesn't, and Shapirle, he doesn't protest. In other words, here from the story, you see he started getting humiliated by having to go and beg for scissors and then having to go grind. And he doesn't complain the whole time. He just does what he's told. You can light. Oh, there's a siren. I'll be back. So now Sancheriv goes and he finds this board from Tevat Noach, from the Noah's Ark. Amar Hainu Elaha Rabba Deshizve Noach Mitofana. He says, "Oh, this is." He makes it into an idol and says, "Oh, this is the God that saved Noach from the flood." Amar I Azohai Gavra Umitzlach. He says, "Listen, if I go and I'm successful, Mikarav Leila train Benohi Kamach. I will sacrifice to you, to this idol, my two sons." Shamu Benohi, the sons heard this, Bekatluhu, and killed him, right? This was reminiscent of Habala Horgachash Kem Lorgo. If someone's going to kill you, Dim Rodev, right? You can kill them. So they killed him. Hainu Dechtiv, and that's why it says, and here we're going to see the reference to this, where they got this from. Vayihu mishtachaveh beit Nisroch Elohav. He was in the house of Nisroch, his God. Nisroch from the language of Nesel, which is a board. Okay, so the board, the God of the boards, and while he was there, his sons killed him. Okay, because they realized because he was praying to this board and promised that he would offer them, they killed him, and thus ends the story of Sancheriv. Now we're going to mention the story of Avraham in the battle against the four kings. Now there's something strange about this pasuk. Means they split up their camp, night. He and his servants, and then they went and attacked. Now, something doesn't make sense here. First of all, at night, not just night. And why is night in the middle of the pasuk? It really should be by Chalek Alehem Huva Avadav. He and his servants split themselves up, made two camps. And Balayla, something like that, at night. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Otomal Action is Damelo La Avraham Laila Shmo. Now we're going to understand why we're bringing this. Because there was an angel that helped, according to Rabbi Yochanan, there was an angel that helped Avraham, and the angel's name was Lila, just like there was an angel in the battle with Sancheriv who helped Chizkiyahu and killed all the Sancheriv's people. There was an angel here that helped. Shneamal, how do we know Lila could be the name of an angel? Well, it's a pasuk in Eov that says, Halayla Amar Horagaver. The night said that a man was born. Okay, so here we have some sort of reference to night, okay? That night is an angel. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Amar Shasa Imo Maaseh Laila. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says, no, that's not what it means. It's that God did an act of night. Okay, what does that mean? Shne'emar min hashamayim nilchamu akochavim silatam nilchamu im Sisra. Now, it says that the night fought with Sisra. Now we're moving to a different fight in the time of Devorah. That Sisra, the stars fought against Sisra. There's a Gemara in Pesachim, at the end of Pesachim, that talks about how the stars came down. God brought them down to earth to basically heat up. The stars are very hot. They heated up all the armor that Sisra and his people were wearing. They were so hot they had to jump into Nachal Kishon, and then the river kind of brought them into the sea, and they all drowned. Amarish Lakish. So something similar happened with Avraham, that the stars fought. Okay, so we have Rabbi Yochanan, who we're gonna see is called sometimes Bar Nafcha, the son of the glass blower, and Rabbi Yitzchak is Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha, or the smith. Depends how you translate it. But Rabbi Yitzchak is Rabbi Yitzchak the smith. So we're going to see here that Rish Lakish says, Tava de Nafcha mi de Bar Nafcha. He says, I like Nafcha's translation better than Bar Nafcha. It's kind of like a play on words here, but it's saying, I prefer Rabbi Yitzchak's interpretation rather than Rabbi Yochanan, said it was an angel, right? He prefers to say it was that God brought the stars down. Vayirdof ad Dan. Now, in that battle, it says that Avram ran until Dan. Rabbi Yochanan, why did he stop in Dan? Well, Kevan Shabbat Tot Tzadik ad Dan Tashash Kocho. He got weakened when he got to Dan. Why? Why specifically in Dan? He saw that in the future they were going to worship idols there. Okay, one was in Beit El, one was in Dan. What were these? These were Eglei Zahav that Yeravam put up in these two places, Beit El and Dan, and Avram saw that was going to happen in this place, and that's why he got weakened when he got there. And another thing that happens with Dan is that Nevuchadnezzar, wasn't able to attack the Jewish people until he got to Dan. And from here, we're going to move into Nevuchadnezzar and his attack on Jerusalem. We're going to compare it to the Sancheriv's attack on Jerusalem. Okay, from Dan, you hear the nacharat of his susim, the horses. You can hear their sounds, the neighing of the horses. What does this show? That when he got to Dan, that was when we heard him. That was when it was noticeable. That was when the destruction really began. Amar Rabbi Zera. Okay, we now have this line that's a little hard to understand because it starts off with afagav, even though, and the continuation of even though this, then that is a little weak and a little hard to understand. The commentaries all offer different possibilities. We'll try to go with one of them, even though none of them are perfect. Afagav deshalach Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera min Nitzivim, even though Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera sent the following three things from Nitzivim, he taught us. Number one, hizaru b'zaken sheshachach tamudo machmat onso. You should be wary of an elderly person that doesn't know their knowledge. They lost all their knowledge because they got old. Be wary doesn't mean be wary, be scared of them. What it means is be respectful of them. Okay, the word hizaru is going to come up in three different contexts here, each time meaning something different. You should still respect them just because they lost their Torah and they don't understand it anymore, right? It's not their fault. Hizaru bivridin ki Rabbi Yehuda. This has to do with shchita, has to do with in the shchita of a bird, you should cut the veins by the neck because not just cut the the esophagus or the trachea by a bird. It's enough to cut one. An animal, you have to cut both for kosher shchita. Here you have to also cut this vein because otherwise the blood won't come out. Okay, I'm not going to get into all the details. We'll learn about in Chulin. V'hizaru b'bnei ha'mei ha'aretz shemehen titzei Torah. And be cautious of Amei Haaretz and don't be so down on them and think, oh, they're nobodies, because sometimes from Amei Haaretz, Torah can be, Torah will come out of them. Now, remember, we started with an even though Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera said these three things, ki hamil modi'in alhu. You should tell them the following thing. It's not really clear why it's even though, and it has to do only with the last one. Even though you should be wary or be cautious or something of Bnei Ha'aretz, because from them Torah is going to come. You should still tell them the following thing. Okay, that's what it kind of sounds like. Some people think you should tell them the Avraham thing, but some people say, no, you should tell them what we're going to read right now. And then what should you tell them? This conversation that happened with Yirmiyahu and God. And it's not really clear why it's even though, okay? Anyway, Sadiq ata Hashem, ki ariv elecha. Okay, you're righteous and you're really always right. If we have a fight, you're going to win. Okay, that's what Yirmiyahu says to God. But, mishpatim adaber otach. But I'm still going to ask you some tough questions. Here's my tough question. Maduach derech reshaim tzlecha. Why do good things happen to bad? Why do good things happen to bad people? Right? Why do the bad people have success? Shalu kobogde bagen netatem gam shorashu yelchu gam asuperi. Okay, and he says that it's peaceful for treacherous people. You planted them, and they have roots, and they go and they make fruits. In other words, things are good for them. They produce fruits. Maya Hajle, what did God answer him? Ki et raglayim ratzta. Okay, this is going to be a little bit confusing, so patience. Ki et raglayim ratzta v'yalucha. So now we're quoting a pasuk. Okay, now we're going to see that this pasuk answers this question. Okay, I'll just read you the pasukim in order, right? It says, Tzaddik ata Hashem ki ariv elecha ach mishpatim adaber otach madua derech Hashem tzlecha. That was all the pasuk. Okay, shalev kol bogdei bagen natatim gam sharashu yochlu gam asupri karov tabafiyam berachot mikiliotem. Okay, that part we didn't read. And then earlier, okay, I'm sorry, 3 psukim later, it says ki et raglayim ratzta v'yalucha. Okay, this pasuk we're going to read now. Your legs ran and you tired. Ech titchare et hasusim. How are you going to compete with horses? And you have confidence in a peaceful place. If you're confident in a peaceful place, but what's it going to be like in water where it's not so easy? Okay, that's going to be the pasuk. So let's explain. A guy comes up and he says, I can run 3 parso, which is a far distance, and I can get there before the horses, even in swampland, okay, which is obviously hard to run it. So after he says this very confident line, a guy comes, a runner, 3 miles, which is much less than 3 parasangs, 3 miles, biyabasha, on land, vinil and the other guy, the original guy who was bragging, is now exhausted. Okay, he runs this run with a guy for a very short distance on land, right? And he's exhausted. Amarlo, umalif ne raglika. So the guy who heard him say this before says to him, if you're like this with this runner who's on foot, before horses, no way are you gonna, of course you're gonna tie. And if this was just 3 miles, shalosh parsaot alacha kama v'kama, 3 parasangs, all the more so you're going to tire. And if it was on land like this, bein b'tzei hamayim alacha kama v'kama, all the more so in swampland, how much more difficult. Afata, just like you. Okay, this is what God says to Yirmiyahu. Now we have to understand the nimshal, right, the explanation of the parable. Bischar arba psiot shilamti loto rasha. Okay, now we're going to explain soon what this is. But the Yirmiyahu is the guy who brags and says, I don't understand what you're doing. Okay, that's kind of what we're going to see. So now he's going to say the following. With the 4 psiot, these 4 steps that Nevuchadnezzar took, which were good to respect God, which we're going to see only later in the story, that Nevuchadnezzar got repaid for this. He tried to give me respect. You're wondrous about this. You don't understand it. Okay, we're going to now say Yirmiyahu is like this person who kind of bragged, but instead of bragging, it's saying you don't understand. Okay, so you don't understand Nebuchadnezzar, who did these 4 psiot and got a little bit of reward for it. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar is like the guy who ran the 3 and tired out. That's really what we're saying. The Yirmiyahu gets tired out, meaning he doesn't really understand. The guy who ran 3 and tired him out. So it's like Yirmiyahu doesn't understand the guy who got rewarded for a little bit, and got some reward in this world. All the more so, now he's saying, all the more so you're going to be in wonder, not like surprise in a bad way, but in wonder when you see what I do to my horses. Okay, and that's Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Kama v'Kama. And that's really what he's saying, that you think that Nebuchadnezzar, you think it's good for the bad people, but it's even greater for the good people. They're going to get a lot more. So maybe what he's saying now, maybe I'm understanding it even a little better, that even though we say that from Amei Aretz, good people are going to come, it's still not as great as what the good people are going to get. Okay, the good people are going to get all the much more so. So that's what we're saying. Even though look at them positively, and that's what he said, but still you should tell them the following, which is better off you're being good people yourselves, even though maybe some good will come out of you, like a little good came out of Nevuchadnezzar. Hainu dichtiv, and this is where we see in the pasuk, the Nevi'im actually immediately mean Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov here. Nishbar libi b'kirbi, on account of the Nevi'im, my heart was broken. Rachafu kol atzmotai, yiti ki ish shikol, u'keneged avaro yayin, v'pnei Hashem b'nei devrei kadsho. In other words, I was like a drunk person when I heard the words of God. In other words, it was like these words of God amazed Yirmiyahu. Okay. Hane arba psiot mahi. So what are these 4 steps that Nebuchadnezzar took? And for this, we're going to have a long story. Okay, sends books and gifts to Chizkiyahu. So at the time, this is Chizkiyahu. This isn't Nebuchadnezzar when he's king. That's later. That's in the time when he actually destroys the temple, much later. But at the time, we're going to see he was a sofer. He was a scribe in the king's palace. The king is Merodach Baladan ben Baladan. Now he's got a weird name, Baladan ben Baladan, like what his middle name is the same as his father's name. Something doesn't make sense there. We're going to have to figure that out also. So he sends these gifts to Chizkiyahu, the king. After Chizkiyahu, if you remember, he was sick and he gets better. He sends him gifts. I don't understand. Why did he send him books? And like, did they have a nice relationship? He's sending books when he got better? Doesn't make any sense. So they explain the following. Yes, he did. Okay, and that's the pasuk. Because it was such an amazing thing that happened in the land, he said, I have to send something. Okay, what was that? Achaz was Chizkiyahu's father, was a terrible king. It was 2 hours into the day, so that's like early morning. Okay, but it immediately became night, so that no one could bury him in respectful manner. They didn't want hespedim, eulogies, and all that. So God made a miracle happen, and it immediately became night. So they lost 10 hours. The Chizkiyahu went now. If you take away 10 hours, you have to return them at some point. So when Chizkiyahu was sick of the Itpach and he got better, he got an extra 10 hours of daylight because we saw this before, how daylight helps cure people, right? Because the night is cold and dark. And so he made a really long day, and that's what helped Chizkiyahu to be cured. Amar. So now, obviously, okay, where are we going to see this from? Dichtiv. הנני משיב את צל המעלות אשר ידע במעלות אחז בשמש אחורנית 10 מעלות. Okay, I'm now returning the ma'alot, which are like the hours that were taken away during Achaz, b'shemesh achorani, when the sun went forward 10 hours. But tashav shemesh eser ma'alot, right apropos, we're now in time change, right? Those who change the time, those who are going to change the time. We're changing them this Thursday, by the way. Anyone who's on our Zoom, you should pay attention. And Batashav Shemesh Eser Ma'alot B'Ma'alot Asher Yarda. Okay, and then the sun went back 10 hours, right? It got fixed. Amar Lahu, my high. So everyone obviously noticed this. So the king says, what is this? Amruleh Chizkiyahu Chalash. Chizkiyahu was sick and got better. Amar Ika Gavra Ki'ai V'Lovin English Yirmiyahu. There's someone so great like this, and I never said hello to them. Hayishat Lo Avahatam. Now at the time, Nevuchadnetzer was not there. Okay. So now, sorry, did I skip a line? Right. Did we say that he was the sofer of the king? No, but anyway, he was. So now, Katvule. So he wrote him the following. Oh, I see. I skipped a line by accident. Okay, Katvule. He says, so they write him the following. Shlam l'malka Chizkiyahu, shlam l'karta Yerushalayim, shlam l'ela Rabbah. So they send the following letter in a second. We're going to see that Nevuchadnezzar was a sofer and he wasn't there at the time. Someone else wrote the letter. Okay, shalom to the king Chizkiyahu. Peace be to him, right? Peace be to the city of Jerusalem. Peace be to their great God. Nevuchadnezzar suffered the baladamaya. He was the sofer, he was the scribe, and he wasn't there at the time. So when he got back from his lunch break, he said, what do you write? So they told him what they wrote. You added their God in, but you put him last. What disrespect. Now here you see, Nebuchadnezzar had this idea of respecting God. You should have written like this. Shlam la Rabbah, Shlam l'karta Yerushalayim, Shlam l'malka Chizkiyahu. It should have been God, Jerusalem, Chizkiyahu. They say to him, to the one who reads the letter, you should be the messenger. This sounds like the original, right? Because it's really about a letter, and you should be the messenger. So Batre, he runs after the person who was delivering the letter. Can you write Arba Psiot? He runs 4 Psiot. Now we get to the 4 steps he took that gave him the reward. Ata Gabriel v'ukmei. Gabriel stopped him. Why did Gabriel stop him? If he had done this, it would have made us look terrible, and we would have never had any hope for the future. So Gabriel stopped him so that he wouldn't continue in this good action, but for the 4 psiot he got, he was rewarded. And we're going to see later how he was rewarded, okay? Or that we're going to see that they wanted to have his children convert, but they were stopped, and that's going to be much, much later in the daf. My Baladan ben Baladan, Amrei Baladan Malka. They say he was king. All of a sudden, there was face change, and he looked like a dog, and he couldn't be the king anymore because no one would respect him. So he stepped down, and Havayate Bre al Machuta, and his son took over. But what was the problem? His father was still alive, but it wasn't respectful for him to be the king. Ki have a katuv shmei, v'shmei da'avua Baladan Malka. So that's why he was called Mirodach Baladan ben Baladan. He kept his father's name in his name to show respect. Hainu dichtiv ben Yechabed Av. Now, this is a pasuk about the, I can't remember, it's just about non-Jews or it's specifically about the Babylonians. And we're going to see about 2 Babylonians, Ben Yechabed Av. Okay, that's Aviv. Ben Yechabed Av, even there, the sons respect the fathers. The Eved Adonav, and a servant respects his master. Now we're going to see who that is. So Ben Yechabed Av Hadamran, that's Mirodach Baladan. The Eved Adonav dichtiv u'b'chodesh ha'chamishi be'asor l'chodesh yishnat 19 shana l'melech Nevuchadnetzer melech Babel. Nevuzaradin Rabba Tabachim Amad Lifnei Melech Babel b'Yerushalayim v'Yisrof et Beit Hashem et Beit HaMelech. Okay, that's the pasuk describing the destruction of the temple. And what does it say? Nevuzaradin, who's the in the reign of Nevuchadnezzar, the king Nevuzaradin, who's his Rav Tabachim, he's like the head of his army, stands before Melech Babel in Jerusalem and burns the temple. So it sounds like he's in Jerusalem, right? Well, turning now to Amabed, the Gemara asks, did Nevuchadnezzar himself go to Jerusalem? No. He was not. How do we know this? Haktiv, Vayalu oto melech Bavel rivlata. They brought Chizkiyahu, when they destroyed the temple, they took Chizkiyahu and they brought him to the king of Babylonia. And where was he? In Rivlata. Now, that's not a city in Israel. But Amar Rabbi Avau, it's certainly not Jerusalem. Amar Rabbi Avau, Zo Antiochia. It's a place, Antioch in Greece. Rav Chisda, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdumi, Chadamar. So what does it mean that he was with, Nevuzaradin was with Nevuchadnetzer? So basically, they're going to explain, Eved respects his Adonav is describing Nevuzaradin with Nevuchadnezzar, and why it says Nebuchadnezzar was with him when he wasn't really with him. Two different interpretations, but they both fit in with this. So one said, Dmut diukno haytacha kukalo amr kavto. He had an image of Nebuchadnezzar on his chariot, so he would always remember and respect Nebuchadnezzar while he was there, right? And they say also, so the fear of Nebuchadnezzar would be upon him. Here they translate the fear, the Ben Yichabed Aviv, Av, and Eved Adonav, is that Eved will be fearful of his master, not exactly respect, but respect out of fear. So one is he put his image there so he'd always remember. He was scared of him. He was so scared of Nebuchadnezzar that it was as if Nebuchadnezzar was with him. Okay, he felt his presence with him at all times. Amar Rav. Okay, so now we're going to hear about what happens when Nevuzaradin gets to Jerusalem and he tried to attack Jerusalem. Remember the story of Sancheriv. Sancheriv gets there and he says, "Oh, this is the city I was working so hard for. This little city, it's nothing." He's overly confident. He says, "Let's just wait till tomorrow," and then the malach comes and destroys him. Well, in this case, they come with a lot of force. Amarava, time tlat mea kunyata narga de parzala, the shalit de parzala, shadole Nevuchadnetzer Nevuzaradin. Okay, let's start from the end of the sentence. Nevuchadnezzar sends with Nevuzaradin 300 mules worth of like the weight of, or something like that, the weight of 300 mules, that amount of what do you call it? Iron axes, to basically pound down the doors of Jerusalem. These are iron axes that could break iron. They're very strong. Kulu balitinu chadashad Yerushalayim. One door of Jerusalem basically swallowed them all up. Okay, meaning ruined them because they banged and banged and they broke. Okay, and then they had almost nothing left. Shne'emal, how do we know this? Okay, these psukim are hard, and even some people switch this pasuk in the next and say they're in the wrong place. Hard to understand exactly, but we'll try to explain. Pitucheha yacha bekashil v'chelafot yahalumon. Okay, so I'm going to read with the English. They pound its carved work with hatchets and hammers. Okay, so that sounds like it could work with this pasuk, right? They were pounding it, and it didn't work. They wanted to go home and say, okay, we're obviously not getting into the city, right? The opposite of Sancheriv, right? They were saying, this isn't going to work. And Amar Mistafina de Lola Abdul Kehechi de Abdul Sancheriv. Because of Sancheriv example, they said, you know what? Because of the precedent, they said, I don't want to happen to us what happened to Sancheriv. They were really scared. Nafka Kalav Amra, but a voice came down and said, Shava bar Shava, leaper, the son of a leaper, like a jumper. Okay, you can jump. Nevuzaradin Shvar. Nevuzaradin, you should jump in. The time has come for the temple to be destroyed and for the sanctuary to be burned. Okay, this is the time is right. Don't worry. Sancheriv came, the time is wrong. Remember, he missed the time. It's all about the timing. Right? That's what seems to be the theme of these stories. Because again, it's all about God. And when God decides this is what God wants to do right now, then you're going to succeed. Pashle chad narga. So they have one axe left. Ata machye bekupa. So they took the dull end of the axe and v'itpach, and it opened up. Okay, shenemal yivadak kemevi lamala b'spach etz kardumot. Okay, so they say it is known that the right that it can cut through. It's unclear how to exactly translate this pasuk, but the way they're saying it, perhaps one way to understand this is the eights of the kardumot, the wood part, right? That's not the iron part, but the wood part is what was actually successful in cutting, in getting through. Okay, again, the psukim are hard to understand here. So he started killing people until he gets to the sanctuary. Alec Ben Nuri lights a fire, Gava Hechla, and the whole sanctuary starts rising up, okay? Basically, to be saved. Okay, so it starts rising up to avoid the fire, but Darchu Beimin Shmaya. But God pushed it down to be burned. Shneamar Gat Darach Adonai LeBetulat Bat Yehuda. Okay, this was like an olive press, okay, or a wine press. And God basically, right, or more a wine press, God pushed it down, okay, to the Betulat Bat Yehuda, and basically caused it to be destroyed. Now, there's a reason why God got involved here in order to take away from the arrogance of the Babylonians. It wasn't just them. So kazi chadate, but it didn't matter because it was Nevuzaradin got very arrogant and said, "Oh, this was all me." Navik bat kalava amrele amakatila katat. So a heavenly voice comes down and says, "You killed an already dead nation. Hechla kalya kalit. You burned an already burnt temple." This, by the way, also relates to things we saw before about a person who kills someone who's about to die anyway doesn't get the death penalty, right? It's not the same. You didn't really kill someone who was alive. You killed someone who was already dead because I determined they were going to be dead, and their sanctuary was going to be burnt anyway. Kimcha tachina tachin. It's like you ground flour that was already ground, right? What's the point of grinding flour? You want to grind the wheat, but if you're grinding flour, you're doing nothing. Shneimar, and here's a pasuk about it. This is a pasuk. Also a pasuk that's confusing. Some people translate it's about Babylonia. It really seems to be about the Jews, but connected with Babylonia because it says Bat Bavel in the pasuk. Anyway, I'm going to try to explain it one way that works anyway. Right? The way they seem to be bringing it is as if this is telling us about the Babylonians. Take flour and grind, right? Take millstone and grind flour in it. Okay, but the pasuk doesn't really sound like it's addressing the Babylonians, it's addressing the Jews about the Babylonians, but either which way, it seems to be saying that what the Babylonians did was they ground flour, which obviously doesn't do anything. Okay, this seems to be saying, right, reveal your hair, and shovel is kind of hairdo also, and reveal your thigh as you're going to walk through Naharot. You're basically going to go off to exile, which again could be the Jews are going to do that, or it could be the Babylonians eventually are going to end up being exiled as well. Chitim lo ne'amar ala kemach, right? Note it doesn't say the wheat; it says the flour. Yeah, when he gets there, there's a very famous story, and the reason why it's famous, first of all, it appears in Gittin in the stories of the Churban, and also it's in one of the keynote is based on this. When he gets to the temple, he sees the blood of Zecharia that's boiling. Amar lehu, so he says to them, "My hi, what is this?" Amruleh, right? He sees blood. He doesn't know it's Zechariah's blood. Okay, who was Zecharia? He was a prophet from 250 years earlier that was killed by the people. They didn't like what he was saying. He was saying the destruction of Jerusalem's going to come, and they didn't like him, and they killed him. So he says, right, what's going on here? What is this blood that's boiling in the temple? Oh, it's just blood from an animal that's spilled. Amar lehu, okay, I'm gonna see. I'm gonna do the same thing and see if the same thing happens. Midamu is not from dam; it's from lidamot, to be similar. Let me see, because that doesn't look to me like it's from a slaughtered animal. So he slaughters an animal below idmu, and it obviously wasn't similar. Amar lehu galuli. So he says, tell me the real truth. If not, I'm gonna comb your body with iron combs. This is similarly a reference to the Rabbi Akiva story and how he was killed by the Romans, comparing, right, using same imagery for first temple and second temple destruction. Amrule, Hai Kohen v'Navi Nabele Israel b'Churbanat Yerushalayim Katlu. Right, he was a Kohen and a Navi. He was actually Zecharia the Kohen. Okay, he was a Kohen and a Navi who prophesied to the people about the destruction of Jerusalem, and they killed him. Amar lehu, ana mefaisinana. So he says, fine, I'll take it upon myself. He didn't like the blood boiling. He says, I'll calm him down so the blood stops boiling. It probably freaked him out a little bit, right, to see this kind of thing. Aite Rabbanan, Tatili Lave Velonach. So he brings the rabbis first, also similar to the Asara Ruge Machu, right, the 10 martyrs in the Roman story. Right, they take first the rabbis. Figure they're the representatives of the people, didn't help. Aite Dardake Tebe Rav, he takes the young students who were learning, Katili Lave, kills them, lonach, doesn't help. Aite Pirche Kahuna, Katili Lave Velonach, takes the Yom Kohanim, doesn't help. Adi Katili Lave, Tishim Ba'arba Ribo Velonach, he kills 940,000 people, doesn't help. Karav Legabe, he goes over to the blood and he says, Amar Zecharia, Tovim Shebehem Ibadatem, Nichale Dat Kelinu Lekulu. You already lost all the good ones. What, you want me to kill all of them? Like at a certain point, he realizes, like, this isn't working. Miyadnach, immediately the blood stops boiling. Here tshuva b'date. All of a sudden, Nevuzaradin does tshuva. He's amazed by what he sees. Amar mahem shalom du ala nefesh achad. Right now, these people, the Jews, who now 940,000 of them died on account of one person's death. Now it's a little weird. It wasn't exactly. It was because of Nevuzaradin, but okay. And it's all because of this one death. He viewed it as like he was acting as a messenger of God. What about me? I just killed 940,000 people. What is going to be with me? Arek, so he runs away. Shadra Portita the Bete, he sends a will to his house, like meaning I'm never coming back. V'it Gayer, and he converts. And from this, we're going to see Tanu Rabbanan. Braita about other converts. Naaman ger toshav haya. Naaman was a ger who basically converted, believed. This was with Elisha when Elisha heals him from his leprosy. He 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 becomes a ger toshav. That means he believes in God, but he doesn't actually really do mitzvot. Nevuzaradin ger tzedek. He was a real ger, okay, really converted to mitzvot. Mibnei banav shel Sisra limdu Torah b'Yushalayim. Okay, from Sisra came. This goes back to the Amei Haaretz, that right. They have Melamdei Torah. Here we're talking about not just Amei Haaretz, but Gentiles. And Gentiles who tried to destroy the Jewish people. Limdu Torah b'Yushalayim. His descendants taught Torah in Jerusalem. Mibnei banav shel Sancheriv limdu Torah b'Rabim. From the descendants of Sancheriv, they taught Torah in public. Who is that? Maninu, Shmaya va'Avtalyon. They were descended from the Zugot. They were descended from Sancheriv. Mibnei banav shel Haman, also Haman, limdu Torah b'Bnei Brak. They taught Torah in Bnei Brak. Af mibnei banav shel Oto Rasha, bikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu lachnisan tachat kampei Ashkenaz. Here we get back finally to Nevuchadnezzar. Now, the grandsons of Nevuchadnezzar, God wanted to bring them into Judaism, just like the others. But the angel said to God, no way, no how. It doesn't make any sense that the person who destroyed your abode, right, is going to basically come be Jewish. We tried to, right, we healed Babylonia, but it was never really healed. Okay, in other words, they're not going to come into our nation. Ula Amar Nevuchadnezzar, okay, and he says that's about Nevuchadnezzar and his children not converting. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Elu Naharot Bavel, he explains it totally differently. These are the rivers of Babylonia, which were known to be very bitter. There were these, I think it's date trees that were growing near the water, and they were very bitter because of the bitter water. Okay, and that was never fixed. Amar Ula. Now we're going to figure out how they knew that this was the right time, the Babylonians. So they had spies, or sort of, right? It wasn't like they tried to have spies, but Amar Ula, Amon Moav, Shivava Bishet Yerushalayim Haba. They were difficult neighbors of, right, the unpleasant neighbors of Yerushalayim. They overheard the prophecy. We saw this before about the Gentiles hearing our prophecies. They overheard the prophecies of the prophet saying the destruction of Jerusalem is impending. So, Shalchul Nevuchadnezzar Puk V'tad. They said to Nebuchadnezzar, come, it's your time has come. Amar, but he said, again, like Nevuzaradin before was scared when he got to the city, and maybe I won't be able to do this. Also, Nebuchadnezzar before that said, Mistafina delila abduli kedibao b'kamah. I don't want them to do to me what they did to Sancheriv when he tried to destroy Jerusalem. Shalchule ki ena ish beveto. So they sent him this, and this is a pasuk. The man is not in the house. Halach b'derech merachok. He went far away. So first, the beginning of the pasuk. Ein ish ela kadosh baruch hu. That's God. God is not in his house anymore. Okay, so don't worry. Shneimar Hashem ish milchama, as we saw before, God is sometimes called ish. Shalach lehu b'krevahu va'ate, but maybe he's close and he'll come back. Shalchule halach b'derech merachok, and that explains the end. No, he's far away. He won't come back. Shalach lehu ilay tzadikei t'ba'al rachamei u'maytele, but the righteous people are there. They're going to pray, and God will come back. Shalchule tzror hakesef lakach biyado. He took the bag of money with him. What are we going to see? The bag of money is the tzaddikim, right? And we know they were taken in the first exile of Yehoiachin and all that, right? They took all the good people, right? The Talmidei Chachamim and the leaders. So, ein kesef el tzaddikim. How do we know this? Shneimar b'echrali b'chamishasar kasef b'chomer sorim v'letach sorim. Okay, the chamishasar kasef is relating to tzaddikim. They say chomer sorim and letach sorim is 30 and 15, and Rashi explains these are these 45 tzaddikim. Usually we say the Lamed Vav, the 36. But there's also this other midrash about 45 tzaddikim that keep the world going. So this is all a reference to the tzaddikim, and they're called the kesef. Shalach lehu hadre v'shai b'tshuva b'arachamim v'maytelem. Maybe the bad people will do tshuva, repent, and then God will, and they'll ask for rachamim, and God will help them. Shalchulei kvar kavalem zman. So he says, listen, God set a time that God is going to redeem them, and that's not now. So you're fine. Shneimar liyom hakeseh yavo lebeito. On the day of the keseh, he will come home. How do we know that's a particular time? Ein keseh lazman. We know, but keseh shneimar, but keseh liyom chagenu. That's the time of Rosh Hashanah, right? It's an indication of time. There really means that the moon is covered, right? It's that time of the month. But the point being is there's a time for that, and that's not now. Shalachle sitvahu. Okay, he's still complaining and saying, I don't want to go. It's the winter now. I'm not going to get there because of the snow and the rain. Shalchule ta ashina detura. Go on the mountain peaks because there the snow doesn't last. It's unclear whether it means the peaks or whether it means the in between the mountains. Unclear exactly, but someplace where you can avoid the snow. Shneimar shulchu kar moshel eretz misel midbar el har bat Zion. Okay, this is, I'll read the English. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from the peaks of the wilderness to the mount of the daughter of Zion. Okay, and here it's talking about the mounts and the peaks and this is the way to get there. Shalach lehu iatina le lately duchta diatvina be. Okay, fine. I'll get there through these peaks of the mountains or whatever it might be, but I don't have anywhere to go when I get there. I don't have a place to make an army base. What am I gonna do? Shalchule kivrot shalahem ulimi palterin shalcha. You know what? Their graves are nicer than your palaces. Dichtiv, and here we're going to end with this pasuk. Ba'eteinu Hashem, on that day, yotziu et atzmot malchei Yehuda, et atzmot Sarav, et atzmot HaKohanim, et atzmot HaNeviim, et atzmot Yoshvei Yerushalayim v'kibrahim. They're going to take out all the bones of the kings, all the way down to the people. Ushtachum l'shemesh v'le'yarech, u'l'chotz la'ashamayim asher ahavum, v'asher avadum, v'asher achu achareim. Okay, and they put them out for the sun and the moon and all the hosts of the heavens, that people prayed to them, right, that made them into idols, and that they followed. And they're going to take out all the graves. And why are they taking them out? Because that's where they're going to have their camp. Remember, the graves were in caves, right? It wasn't like graves in the ground, like our graves. So, or you could say maybe like trenches in the ground, but I assume because they were caves, and that's where they camped. Okay, so what did we see here today? We started with Sancheriv's downfall and how he was killed in the end, how God brought him down, and then how his sons killed him. And then we got to, from there, we segued into the Avraham story, where there was also an angel possibly that helped him win the battle with the four kings. And then we got from there to Dan and what happened in Dan, and we compared again a few of these stories together, and things happen here. From Dan, we got to, that's where Nevuchadnetzer started and really his battle in Dan. And then we started with how sometimes bad people, good things come from ignoramuses or also from Gentiles. And that got us on this whole long story of these 4 psiot that Nebuchadnezzar took, which almost got him rewarded, right? But then in the end, right, his children didn't become converts, although the children of others really did become converts, or even Nevuzaradin himself became a convert. We heard his whole story, how he got to Jerusalem, was scared to attack the Jewish people, ends up, yes, coming to attack them and doing it anyway because he gets all this encouragement, but he needs a lot of encouragement. And Nebuchadnezzar also, to decide to wage battle on Jerusalem, took a lot of encouragement according to these stories. And we're going to end here. The next section at the very end of the daf starts this whole other section about the Mashiach. We'll start that tomorrow. Wishing everyone a Shavua Tov. And, after the sirens went off in the middle of class today, maybe a quieter week, and praying for B'sorot Tovot.